Rain needles the hospital windows. Arthur Hale, 68, is wheeled beneath fluorescents that flatten color to bone. His shirt is cut away, cold air lifts the gray hair on his arms. A paramedic keeps a gloved hand on his shoulder. "Sir, stay with me," the paramedic says. The badge reads Rosado, M. You'll be in surgery in 2 minutes. Arthur tries to answer, but pain bites down. Monitors chatter. A nurse runs beside the gurney and flips his chart. Emergency contact? Ryan, he manages. Doors hit his heels and swallow him. Cut to that afternoon, a garage lit by a single bulb. Arthur turns a wrench. His phone buzzes. Need the truck for a couple hours, showing props. Key still hanging? Arthur answers, take it. Drive safe. The keys gleam on the pegboard. Back to the present, the doors snap open to the trauma bay. Possible perforation, prep for OR, calls Dr. Vieira. The nurse taps a number and hits speaker. Across town, a rooftop bar hums. String lights drip gold on wet concrete. Ryan, 32, tan coat slung over a chair, leans toward a cake where sparklers spit light. His phone vibrates. He glances, mouth already turning down. "This is St. Augustine Medical," the nurse says into the music. "Your father is being rushed into surgery. We may be approaching his last." "I'm at a party with friends," Ryan says, annoyance sharpened by champagne. He turns for a photo. "I'll call later." The nurse stands very still. "Sir," the call ends. On the rooftop, cheer drowns consequence. Ryan lifts his glass and laughs too loudly, as if volume could erase what he heard. Inside the hospital, the paramedic, Miguel Rosado, meets Arthur's eyes a second before anesthesia fogs them. "I've got you," he says, not moving his hand. Fluorescent light drills the ceiling. Arthur tastes the mask and thinks, not in words, more in muscle memory, of the closet at home with the heavy door that opens when the code is right. Numbers tap his skull like rain. Then the world slides away. "Scalpel," Dr. Vieira says. Steel flashes. The room becomes a ceremony of focus, hands, clamps, breath measured to beeps. In the corridor, the nurse redials the number, once, twice, 3 times, until voicemail answers as if nothing urgent lived in this night. She leaves a message in the careful voice people use when grief might be listening. "Please come. He asked for you." It could be his last night. Thunder rolls beyond concrete. The paramedic washes his hands and looks toward the doors he cannot enter. He folds his wet knuckles into fists, then lets them go. Outside, rain slides off the roof. Downtown, the party tilts toward midnight. A bottle wobbles. A man in a tan coat pockets truck keys without looking. In the operating room, a steady beep holds. "We're through," Dr. Vieira whispers. Arthur sleeps, unaware of rooftop lights, the keys, the rain on his driveway camera, or the message waiting in a phone already silenced. Night folds into rain. Morning bleached the hospital windows. Arthur woke to a stitched ache, a sandpaper throat, and a monitor ticking. A nurse with tired eyes adjusted his 4. "You're through the worst," she said. Her badge read Camila. "We called your emergency contact again." "My son?" he asked. She nodded. "I left a message. He has the details." She set a paper cup on the stand. When she left, the room's hum returned. Arthur sipped, found his phone, and played the night's voicemail, "Please come. He asked for you." It could be his last night. The words waited for shock that didn't arrive. He stared at the red dot beside Ryan's name and felt a fatigue older than pain. Down the corridor, the paramedic from last night, Miguel Rosado, signed out, texted his wife, "Surgery went well. Home soon," touched the chapel doorframe, and stepped into drizzle. Headlights brightened wet asphalt. Arthur drifted in and out, pain blunted by medication and by the memory of Ryan at 10, building a birdhouse on the porch. He couldn't square that boy with the man who'd said, "I'm at a party with friends." Near noon, Nora Delgado appeared, steady in a windbreaker. You look like you fought a bear, she said. Bear lost, he rasped. I'll drive you home when they let you out. Doctor says later if you can walk to the door and back. He did, 5 steps to the sink, 5 back. By late afternoon, discharge papers waited in a plastic folder. Camilla packed gauze and squeezed his shoulder. He'll come around, she murmured. At Arthur's driveway, the porch light still burned. Nora cut the engine. You sure you don't want me to stay? She asked. I'll be all right. They went in slowly. Passing the garage, Nora noted wrongnesses, the pickup tucked deeper than usual, a wet slick where it shouldn't be, the trash bin lid not seated. She filed it, said nothing. Inside, the house held a hush. Arthur sat on the bed and stared at the closet door. Beyond it, bolted to the floor, was the heavy box that had outlived storms. He didn't open it. He let its presence be a weight he could brace against. You call me if you need anything, Nora said. And if something feels off, call before you lift it. He managed a smile. You never really retired, did you? From the job? Sure. From the habit? Never. When she left, the house exhaled. Arthur set his phone down, typed "I'm home," erased it, then played the voicemail again. It held. He warmed stew and ate at the sink. Through the rain-laced window, the driveway camera stared back. The sight nudged something. In the garage, the trash bin yielded. On top of crushed flyers lay a pale shard shaped like a fawn. It smelled of rain and metal. He pictured the pickup's grin missing a tooth. He set the shard on the workbench and went back inside. The closet waited. The safe waited. So did the part of him that wanted proof more than comfort. He shut the door and reached for the code. His fingers hovered over the keys. The house listened as Arthur closed the bedroom door behind him. Rain worked the gutters, the wall clock ticked with the sound of a small nail tapping wood. He stood in the narrow closet where his suits hung like quiet witnesses and faced the steel faceplate bolted into concrete. The keypad waited, a neat row of black squares, each soft as a piano key. His fingers hovered. He breathed once, twice, then typed the code he could do in the dark. 4 soft beeps. The lock gave that familiar padded sigh. The door swung, and the cool, dry breath of the safe met his face. Paper, oil, old cedar. Inside, manila folders with dates in his careful hand, his late wife Elaine's pearls in a velvet box the color of rainwater, the house deed in a plastic sleeve, 2 palm-sized hard drives and zip bags with labels he'd block printed months ago. Garage cam, year 4/Q1, Q2. Front drive, year 4/Q1, Q2. He touched the pearls with his fingertip, as if tapping a shoulder in a crowded room, and then took both drives. On his way to the kitchen he stopped, listening to the house. No pipes, no refrigerator hum, just weather and the clock. He set the drives on the table and reached for the landline. When the banks hold music thin to a human voice, he gave his name and account number. Mr. Hale, your passphrase, the woman asked. Maple Street in winter, he said. Thank you. How can I help? I want all link transfers frozen, online and auto, he said, steady. Starting now. A pause. Keys clicking. Done. You'll still be able to write checks. That'll do. When he hung up, his phone on the table lit with a single new message from an unknown number, St. Augustine billing. Your estimated balance. He silenced it. The money could sit in place like a weight on a scale. First, truth. He slid front drive into the laptop's port. A small green eye opened along its edge. The screen bloomed a directory, dates marching like fence posts. He scrolled to Saturday 22 to 2 o'clock. The thumbnail square showed only darkness and rain at first, a driveway turned pond under the streetlight's weak cone. He pressed spacebar. The world became pixels of water. Headlights smeared into the frame, then flared, the image pulsed white and then resolved into the broad nose of his old pickup, close and wrong. The right headlamp glared. The left was a dark socket ringed by wet silver. The truck eased too far, too hard, as if ashamed of itself. Arthur paused the video with a finger tapping the spacebar, a tap that sounded, to his own ears, like a gavel. He stared at the frozen frame until he felt the muscle at the hinge of his jaw start to ache. He rewound to the start and let it play again. Rain needled the hood. The truck rolled. Stopped. Nothing else moved in that narrow slice of the world but water. He watched it a third time, because repetition can turn disbelief into comprehension. Then he clicked the little arrow that took him to the camera nested in the garage ceiling. The garage cam folder opened a dozen rectangles, each tagged 39 minutes and 12 seconds, 41 minutes and 3 seconds, 43 minutes and 18 seconds. He clicked the first. The angle was high and slightly wide, his workbench, the pegboard with its clean outline shadows where tools returned to their places, the trash bin by the door. The garage door shuttered and lifted, rain-laced light spilling across the concrete like a thrown sheet. The truck nosed in. The missing headlight gaped like a pulled tooth. Arthur's hand moved, instinct, toward the shard he'd set earlier on the bench. He laid it beside the laptop. The shapes matched. He exhaled through his nose, slow. On screen, the driver's door opened. A man in a tan coat climbed down, hunched against the rain, and stole a glance over his shoulder in the universal language of "Did anyone see me?" His face was turned away by angle and hood, but the posture, that hurry shaped by guilt, was a signature Arthur recognized too well. The man lifted the trash bin lid, dropped something pale inside, 2-3 pieces of the headlight that might have held a story if you'd let them. Arthur paused again. The garage was a box of echoes, a thud that had already happened, a door that had already closed. He let the stillness sit. He didn't talk to the screen. He didn't curse. He simply cataloged, timestamp, angle, sequence. Proof over feeling. He ejected the first drive, slid it back into its bag, and loaded the second to duplicate the files. One to keep. One to hand over. He stood, joints protesting, and walked to the closet again. The safe yawned like a patient thing. Before sliding the drives in, he pulled out a single blank envelope and a lined notepad. He wrote 3 words on the front in block letters, "For Detective Ruiz," then set it carefully on the shelf. Back in the kitchen, the laptop screen had dimmed to a gray that reflected him faintly, a man with stitches and a new thinness at the mouth. The phone on the table was a little black door he could open with his thumb and walk through into an argument that would use up the rest of the night. He didn't open it. He reached instead for a dish towel and folded it over the phone, a small act of control. Only then did he send a single text, "Come by at 6. I'm opening the safe. Papers to sign." He watched the status change to delivered. Rain ticked the window. Upstairs, the closet light, left on, glowed softly under the door, the way a lighthouse keeps its beam even when no one is looking. "You said." Arthur sat hunched at the kitchen table, the glow of the laptop washing his face in pale blue. The rest of the house was dark except for the faint light spilling from the closet upstairs, where the safe door still hung slightly ajar like a mouth left open mid-thought. Rain tapped the glass in a rhythm that matched the hammering in his chest. He pressed play again. The front drive footage filled the screen, pixelated drops streaking downward. At 12:43 a.m., the beam of a single headlight broke through the curtain of water. The truck's right lamp burned, the left gaped black, jagged metal framing its socket. The bumper carried something darker than rain, a smear that glistened oddly under the light. The truck's tires rolled into view, slow, deliberate, as if the driver was forcing calm into a body that wanted to run. Arthur's hand tightened on the mouse. The video wasn't just a picture. It was a confession in pieces. He rewound and watched again, this time slowing the playback. The rain blurred like thin curtains. The truck's shadow stretched along the driveway wall, swallowing the mailbox, bending over the hedge. When the engine cut off, silence filled the frame, only the whisper of rain remained. Arthur clicked to the next angle, garage cam. The timestamp read 12:46 a.m. The door rattled upward, water spilled across the concrete floor. The truck crawled inside, its missing headlamp making it look wounded, guilty. The lens, perched above the workbench, caught everything with the patience of a watchman. The driver's door opened. A figure climbed out, pulling his coat tight against the rain. Arthur knew that coat, tan, tailored, the one he had seen Ryan wear to client meetings and rooftop parties. Even with the hood pulled low, Arthur knew the way his son moved, fast steps followed by a stutter, the exact rhythm Ryan had had since he was a boy trying to sneak cookies from the kitchen. Ryan lifted the trash bin lid, dropped something pale and jagged inside. The lid clapped shut with a metallic echo. He wiped his hands on his coat and checked his phone. The screen's glow lit his face for 1 second, enough to make the truth undeniable. His expression was tight, eyes darting, mouth pressed thin. Panic and calculation lived there side by side. Arthur paused the frame. His son's face stared back at him in the bluish light, wet hair plastered to his forehead, jaw clenched, guilt etched in every line. The room seemed to tilt. He braced his hand on the table until the tremor passed. The shard of broken headlight he had pulled from the trash earlier still lay on the workbench in the garage. Arthur stood, walked to retrieve it, and set it beside the laptop. The shapes matched perfectly, a tooth fitted back into a broken jaw. Evidence. He copied the footage onto the second drive, labeling it quietly in his head, for Ruiz. Then he slid both drives back into the safe, but this time, before closing the door, he added a single thick envelope with Ryan's name on it. Inside, he slipped a ledger he had kept for years, every transfer, every bill, every debt he had covered for his son. The total was circled at the bottom in red ink. It wasn't anger that had made him keep those notes. It was the need for truth. The safe door closed with its soft sigh. The closet light bled under the door like a warning beacon. Arthur sat again at the table, staring at the phone under the folded dish towel. He tapped it once, uncovered the screen, and drafted a text with steady hands. "Come by at 6. I'm opening the safe. Papers to sign." He pressed send. The word delivered blinked back at him. Across town, in an apartment full of glass and borrowed furniture, Ryan Hale's phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at the message while pouring himself another drink. The words opening the safe cut through his fog like a siren. His hand froze mid-pour. His eyes lingered on the screen, then on the dented truck keys lying too close to the sink. The rain outside hissed against the windows, relentless. Back at the kitchen table, Arthur folded his hands, listening to the storm. He didn't know if the message would bring his son home or drive him further away. But the safe was ready. And so was he. By 4 o'clock the house had the stillness of a held breath. Arthur moved through rooms like a man measuring floorboards before a heavy piano. He rinsed a chipped Dutch oven, set stew to a low simmer, and wiped the table twice though it didn't need it. On the counter, his phone glowed with a red pulse, voice memo, recording, then disappeared beneath a folded dish towel. The microphone faced the chairs. Upstairs, the closet door was left an inch ajar. The safe's keypad threw a faint green square onto the carpet, a lighthouse under wool-dark sky. Inside, everything was arranged with a draftsman's neatness, 2 labeled camera drives, the deed, a velvet box of pearls, a thick envelope stamped for Detective Ruiz, and another with Ryan printed in block letters. Beneath those, Arthur slid a plastic sleeve he had touched but not read in years. Conditional amendment, estate of Arthur Hale. He closed the safe and left the light on. He texted Nora, "Coffee at 6:15? Might need a second pair of eyes." Her reply came fast, "Porch lights already on, Arthur." He looked out the window. It was. He hadn't flipped the switch. At 4:32 p.m., he called the bank again and confirmed the freeze. "Yes, ma'am, checks only," he said, voice even. He hung up and dialed no one else. The nurse's voicemail, the one about last night possibly being his last, he didn't play again. He could feel it behind his ribs like a bruise. Across town, Ryan stood over a spotless sink in a spotless kitchen he barely afforded. The text, "Come by at 6. I'm opening the safe. Papers to sign," sat on his screen like a ticking device. He tried a body shop, they asked for photos and the truck's location. He lied, front bumper scrape. Nothing major. He opened a news app to distract himself and flinched at a headline he'd been avoiding since dawn: hit and run leaves local paramedic critical. He scrolled past before the name could focus, poured whiskey, then dumped it, then poured less. He showered too hot, too fast, and put on the tan coat like armor. At 5:11, he bought a bouquet from the grocery store nearest Arthur's Street that still had rain on its awning. The cashier suggested a card. Ryan smiled too brightly and said, "No time." He stared through the glass at a bus stop, calculating whether arriving without the truck would look more or less guilty. He ordered a rideshare. Back on Maple Street, Nora crossed her yard in a windbreaker and a ball cap, the retired cop version of casual. She lifted a hand toward Arthur's kitchen window. He lifted his back. He watched her walk on as if she were only getting mail. It steadied him. He set 2 blue plates. He pulled out chairs just so. He placed the pocket recorder, old gray pebble, beside the salt, visible. Different bait on different hooks. At 5:40, thunder grumbled far off. The stew bubbled. Arthur checked the envelope labeled Ryan. Inside, the ledger pages that added to a number he had never said aloud, and a single still frame from the garage camera where rain made a halo of the lie. He sealed it and laid it by the dish towel. He rehearsed nothing. He had learned, raising a son, that explanations invited negotiations. He would ask questions that only had answers, and he would listen. By 5:58, the air tasted metallic with rain. Far down the street, a car door shut, the sound carrying in damp air like a judge's gavel. Arthur felt his pulse pick up and made it slow by counting fence pickets through the window. 1, 2, 3, the whole line he'd painted the summer Ryan turned 12. At 6 the doorbell rang, that cheerful chime that always sounded like a neighbor returning a borrowed tool. Arthur wiped his hands on a towel, not because they were wet but because it gave them something to do. He glanced once toward the soft glow under the closet door. The safe's light held steady, a square of quiet resolve. He opened the door. Ryan stood with the bouquet and a smile that had too many teeth. Rain dotted his hair. His eyes flicked past Arthur's shoulder toward the hall before he could stop them. "Dad," he said, breath fogging. "You look good." Arthur stepped aside. "Come in," he said, and the recorder under the towel caught the first hesitant scrape of shoes on tile, the tiny hitch in a son's throat, the low, steady answer of a father who had arranged a room for truth. "You." The bouquet was damp from rain, wrapped in thin cellophane that crinkled too loudly in the quiet hall. Arthur took it without comment and dropped it into a measuring cup on the counter. A mismatched gesture deserved a mismatched vase. Ryan's smile faltered, then reassembled itself, more cautious this time. "Thought these might brighten the place," he said, shrugging off his tan coat. He draped it carefully over a chair, checking to see if Arthur noticed the frayed cuff, the faint dark streak on the sleeve. Arthur didn't. Or maybe he did, and that was worse. The kitchen smelled of beef stew and bay leaves. 2 blue plates were set. Arthur ladled silently, slid one across the table. Steam curled between them like smoke from a match. Ryan picked up his spoon, stirred, and didn't eat. His eyes wandered again and again toward the hallway, to the faint green glow slipping from under the closet door upstairs. "You should have called me sooner," Ryan started, breaking the silence with a voice pitched too high. "If I'd known how serious it was." Arthur cut him off, his tone even, tired. "They called you." Ryan blinked, lips parting, then pressed into a practiced look of hurt. "Dad, come on." It was chaos. Music blasting, I couldn't hear what they were saying. "I thought." Arthur reached for the pocket recorder beside the salt and pressed a button. A thin voice filled the kitchen, the nurse's, weary, urgent, "Your father asked for you." "Sir, please, it could be his last night." The stew's steam seemed to vanish. Ryan's spoon clattered against the bowl. That's out of context," he stammered, color rising to his cheeks. "You know how people exaggerate." She couldn't know for sure. Arthur didn't answer. He let the silence settle, a heavy weight. Ryan shifted in his chair, tugged at his collar, finally tried again. I'm here now, aren't I? That's what matters. Look, Dad, I was scared. I didn't know what to do, and I was celebrating a big deal, you know? My clients needed me there. If I'd left, it could have ruined everything. His words tangled over each other, less rehearsed than desperate. Arthur finally spoke, soft as a hammer falling. You chose them. Ryan's throat bobbed. He leaned forward, palms up, like a boy caught with crumbs on his shirt. I panicked. You know me, I don't always. I make mistakes. But I came now. Let's just move forward. Please. Arthur studied him, the lines in his face more canyoned under the yellow light. This isn't about Stu. Or flowers. Or me getting older. He paused. It's about what you did after you hung up. The words landed like stones in water. Ryan's eyes flickered, his breath hitched, and for a split second his mask slipped, panic flashing raw before the smile returned, shaky but determined. You're tired, Ryan said quickly. You just got out of the hospital. Let's not drag up, whatever. We can talk about bills, or paperwork, or, he gestured vaguely toward the hallway, toward the safe, his finger almost trembling as it pointed and then pulled back. Why don't we just get that part over with? Whatever papers you wanted me to sign. Arthur pushed his chair back, slow, steady. The wooden legs groaned on the tile. He stood and picked up the envelope with Ryan's name on it, thick and sealed, and set it on the table between them. We'll get to it, Arthur said, his voice low, final. But first, you're going to see. He turned, walking toward the hallway. Ryan's gaze followed, throat working, hands tightening on the edge of the table. The faint glow from the closet spread wider as Arthur reached for the door. And Ryan, his jaw clenched, his body coiled, looked suddenly less like a son at dinner and more like a man about to be judged. The closet door gave a soft groan as Arthur pushed it open. The air inside smelled faintly of cedar and machine oil, a scent that clung to the safe like memory. The keypad's green glow pulsed once when he touched it, and his fingers moved with the certainty of decades, no hesitation, no fumbling. For quick tones, a final click, then the padded sigh of release. Ryan hovered just behind him, bouquet forgotten on the kitchen counter. His eyes widened as the heavy door swung open. Inside, neatly arranged, were the artifacts of a lifetime, the velvet box holding his mother's pearls, manila folders stamped with dates, 2 small drives in labeled plastic, and thick envelopes waiting like sealed judgments. Ryan leaned forward involuntarily, the way a gambler leans when the dice are cast. He caught himself, straightened, and tried to look casual. You've been keeping a lot in here, he murmured, voice thin. Arthur reached past the pearls, past the drives, and withdrew only one envelope, white, thick, his son's name written across it in block letters. He turned, letting the safe's breath wash over them, and walked back to the kitchen table. Ryan followed, his steps uneven, as if the floor itself had changed. Sit, Arthur said. They sat across from each other. The envelope lay between them like a loaded pistol. Arthur folded his hands, Ryan stared at the seam, willing it to split open. Go on, Arthur said at last. Ryan snatched it up, tore the seal with his thumb. Papers slid free, lined sheets, numbers written in Arthur's careful block script. Dates, transfers, loan payments, credit balances. A ledger of rescues. Line after line stretched across the years, ending with a total circled at the bottom in red ink, $184,327. Color drained from Ryan's face. What is this? He demanded, though his voice shook. My life savings, Arthur answered softly. And your debts. Every dollar I pulled you out of, every mess you left me to clean. I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget the weight I've been carrying. Ryan flipped the pages, hands trembling. Dad, I didn't ask you to keep track like this. I said I'd pay you back. You never did, Arthur cut in, his voice sharper now, steel under fatigue. Ryan swallowed, set the ledger aside, and found one more paper tucked behind it. A still frame, printed in grainy black and white, showing the garage from above. The truck sat with its broken headlight gaping. Ryan himself, hood up, was frozen mid-motion, dropping shards into the trash bin. The timestamp glowed in the corner. The photograph slipped from his fingers onto the table. Arthur's eyes didn't leave him. "Explain it." Ryan's mouth opened, closed. His jaw clenched until his teeth ground together. I didn't, he came out of nowhere." "Who?" Arthur asked, voice almost gentle. The silence that followed was louder than thunder. Arthur reached to the laptop, pressed a key. The screen bloomed with rain. The truck rolled into the driveway, broken headlight glinting. Then the garage, the door yawning, Ryan stepping out, shoulders hunched, eyes darting. The room filled with the sound of rain on metal, recorded and undeniable. Ryan shoved back from the table, pacing, rubbing his temples with both hands. "It was an accident, Dad. You have to believe me. No one saw, no one was hurt." Arthur's voice landed like a hammer. "A man was left on the road. Miguel Rosado. A paramedic. He was the one who held my shoulder when I thought I wouldn't make it. After he saved me, someone hit him. You drove home in my truck that night." Ryan froze mid-step, his breath stuttering, his face drained of all color. Arthur leaned forward, voice quieter now, but each word carried the weight of stone. "I opened the safe, Ryan. But what's inside isn't money. It's truth. And tonight, it breathes. You." The kitchen felt smaller now, as if the walls had leaned into here. Rain pressed against the windows and sheets, and the single bulb above the table hummed faintly. Ryan stood frozen, halfway between the sink and the chair, eyes wide, chest heaving. Arthur didn't move. His hands rested calmly on the table, one finger tapping the still photograph of the garage. "You asked who," he said, his voice steady, deliberate. "It was Miguel Rosado. The paramedic who kept me alive in the ambulance that night." The words dropped like stones into water. Ryan's lips parted, then closed. He looked away, his throat bobbing. No. That can't be true." Arthur clicked the spacebar. The footage resumed, rain streaking down the lens. The truck lurched into the garage, broken headlight glaring. Ryan stumbled out, coat soaked, hand darting to the trash bin. His face, lit by the phone's glow, was unmistakable. "You left him there," Arthur said. Ryan gripped the counter, knuckles whitening. "Dad, please, you don't understand. It was dark, it was raining, I didn't even see him until after. I panicked." He turned, his voice cracking now. "I didn't mean to. I didn't want anyone hurt." Arthur's eyes narrowed. "But you kept driving. You thought about yourself, not him. Just like you did when they called from the hospital. Just like you always do." The accusation landed harder than the evidence. Ryan's shoulders hunched as if bracing for impact. His hands shook when he reached for the envelope again, as though some new page inside might rewrite the truth. But the papers remained what they were, numbers and debt, proof and silence. "Dad," Ryan whispered, his voice small now. "I can fix this. Please. If you help me, just a little more, just this once, I can repair the truck, I can make this disappear. No one has to know." Arthur stared at him, almost in disbelief. "Disappear," he repeated. "A man lies in a hospital bed, fighting for his life, and you want to make it disappear?" Ryan stepped forward, desperation spilling into his words. "I'm begging you. You don't understand what I've built, my job, my reputation, everything could be gone. Just give me enough from the safe. Please. I'll pay you back, I swear it." His voice cracked on the last word, a sound that clung to the air like a frayed wire. Arthur didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You came here tonight to beg," he said softly. "Not for forgiveness. Not for truth. For money." Ryan's eyes glistened. His mouth trembled as if he wanted to deny it, but the silence between them did the work for him. Arthur leaned forward, his voice dropping to a low, cutting whisper. The safe doesn't hold salvation for you, Ryan. It holds proof. And tonight, that proof is no longer yours to bury. For the first time, Ryan looked small, truly small, in his father's eyes. The tan coat hung heavy on him, the bouquet wilted on the counter, and every excuse he had rehearsed dissolved into raw panic. He sank into the chair opposite Arthur, head in his hands. Please, he muttered through his palms. Just, tell me what to do. Arthur's gaze didn't waver. You're going to do what you should have done the moment it happened. You're going to face it. The rain outside lashed harder, as though echoing the judgment inside. And for the first time in years, Ryan stopped speaking, stopped performing, and sat still, cornered not by his father's anger, but by his father's truth. You said. The kitchen clock ticked like a metronome, filling the silence that Ryan's sobs had left behind. Arthur rose slowly, joints stiff, and reached for his coat from the peg by the door. He moved with the calm of a man who had already decided the outcome before the conversation began. Get your coat, he said. Ryan's head jerked up. What? Where are we going? His voice was hoarse, as if the words scraped his throat raw. Arthur's eyes didn't soften. To the station. You'll tell them what happened. Ryan laughed, a sharp, broken sound. Dad, no, you can't do that. You'll ruin me. My career, my life, it'll all be over. Arthur turned to face him, steady, unblinking. You already ruined yourself when you left a man dying in the street. Tonight, you start fixing it. Ryan's face twisted between rage and despair. He slammed his hands on the table. I said I panicked. Haven't you ever made a mistake? Haven't you ever wanted to take something back? Arthur's jaw tightened, but his tone stayed level. Not like this. He lifted the envelope marked for Detective Ruiz and slipped it into his coat pocket. Come quietly with me, or Nora brings you in wearing cuffs. Your choice. Ryan's lips parted, ready to argue again, but then his eyes flicked to the hallway, to the faint green glow that still leaked from under the closet door. He froze there, torn, calculating whether to lunge for the safe, to destroy the drives, to gamble everything on one desperate act. The urge flashed across his face like lightning, and died just as quickly. He slumped back into the chair, chest heaving. I'll come, he whispered. Arthur nodded once. Good. They left together, the door closing behind them with a hollow thud. Rain slicked the porch steps, and the night air smelled of wet asphalt and iron. Nora stood across her yard, hands in her windbreaker pockets, eyes sharp under the brim of her cap. When Arthur met her gaze, she gave the smallest nod. The kind that meant she had heard everything through the walls, or through instinct. Ryan's rideshare idled at the curb, headlights hazy in the rain. He slid into the back seat like a man climbing into a coffin. Arthur followed, placing himself between his son and the opposite door. The driver asked no questions, just adjusted the wipers and pulled them into the wet, gleaming street. Downtown lights reflected off puddles, fractured and blurred. Ryan pressed his forehead to the window, silent, his breath fogging the glass. His hands fidgeted on his knees, over and over, as if the motion alone could erase the footage burned into his father's drives. Arthur sat rigid, watching the road ahead. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence was heavier than any lecture. When the car stopped outside the precinct, Ryan lingered, frozen. It was Arthur who opened the door first, stepping into the rain, coat collar up. He turned back, gaze steady. It's time. For a long moment Ryan didn't move. Then, with the hollow resignation of a man walking a gallows stair, he followed. Together they entered the building's harsh fluorescent light. Inside, Detective Ruiz was waiting in a small interview room, his notepad open, pen already in hand. Miguel Rosado's name was scrawled at the top of the page. Arthur reached into his coat and placed the sealed envelope on the table. The sound it made, thick paper on cheap laminate, echoed louder than Ryan's ragged breath. No words were needed. The truth had arrived. You said. The interview room smelled of burnt coffee and wet coats. A clock ticked too loud on the wall, each second dragging Ryan deeper into a chair that felt more like a trap than a seat. Detective Ruiz sat opposite him, dark brows knit, his pen scratching only when Ryan spoke. Arthur remained near the door, leaning against the wall. His presence was steady, silent, like a weight pressing Ryan to stay in his seat. The envelope marked for Detective Ruiz lay on the table, unopened but undeniable. Ryan's story spilled in broken pieces, words that tripped over each other, fragments of excuses stitched together. The rain, it was dark. I didn't see him until. I panicked. I was scared. His voice cracked as he stumbled through it, but each sentence sounded thinner than the last. Ruiz wrote, nodded occasionally, but his eyes carried no sympathy. When it was over, the detective slid the envelope closer, tapping it with the tip of his pen. We'll confirm everything, he said flatly. He stood and left, taking the envelope with him. The door clicked shut, leaving only father and son in the humming room. Ryan buried his face in his hands. It's over, he whispered. I'm finished. Arthur crossed the room and sat opposite him, folding his hands calmly. You're not finished. Not yet. But you don't get to walk away clean. Ryan looked up, eyes red, trembling. Then what happens? Prison? Headlines? You'll let them destroy me? Arthur shook his head slowly. I've already decided. Years ago, when your mother died, I drafted an amendment to my will. It's been sitting in the safe ever since. Tonight, it came out. He pulled a thick document from his coat pocket and laid it on the table. The header read, Conditional Amendment, Estate of Arthur Hale. Ryan blinked at it, wary, as though it were a snake. Arthur's voice was low but sharp. The clause says this: if my heir refuses me in a crisis, or flees the scene of a crime he has caused, all inheritance is void. Every cent. Every right. Gone. Ryan's mouth opened, but Arthur raised a hand, silencing him. I also left myself one narrow door, Arthur continued. The grantor, the parent, can grant an exception, but only if the heir accepts full responsibility and completes restitution chosen by me. Ryan's chest heaved. What does that mean? Arthur leaned in, his eyes unflinching. It means you'll spend the next 3 years working at the Rosado Fund. Stocking food shelves, delivering aid checks, visiting Miguel in the hospital until he wakes, or doesn't. You'll learn his daughter's name and remember it. You'll take nothing for yourself. No shortcuts. No schemes. Ryan recoiled, his voice breaking. 3 years? Doing charity work? Arthur's reply was swift. Not charity. Restitution. You want mercy? This is the only kind you'll get. Ryan's lips trembled. And if I refuse? Arthur's gaze hardened. Then you lose everything. The house, the accounts, my name. I'll let Detective Ruiz have the full drives tonight, and you'll carry your guilt into court, not into service. That's the choice. Silence pressed in. Rain battered the window. Ryan looked at his hands, soft, manicured, hands that had never held weight for long, and then at his father's steady eyes. For a moment, he searched for a loophole, a crack to crawl through. None existed. His shoulders sagged. He nodded, barely. I'll do it. Arthur slid a pen across the table. Sign. Ryan signed with a shaking hand. The ink scrawled his name, binding him not just to paper, but to consequence. Arthur gathered the document, folded it with care, and slipped it back into his coat. Then he stood. It begins tomorrow, he said. And you'll thank me one day, though not today. Ryan lowered his head, silent. The door opened. Detective Ruiz re-entered, holding the evidence drive. He looked between father and son, noting the silence, the signatures, the weight in the air. He didn't ask what had passed. He didn't need to. Arthur nodded once to the detective. Then he turned to Ryan. "Let's go." And for the first time that night, Ryan followed without protest. "You said." The next morning broke with a pale, washed-out sky, clouds still heavy with leftover rain. Arthur sat at the kitchen table with his coffee cooling in front of him, staring at nothing. Upstairs, the closet safe hummed in his mind like a closed mouth that had already spoken too much. Across town, Ryan was already at the Rosado Fund office. The building wasn't much, an old community center with peeling paint, its walls lined with shelves of canned goods and donated clothes. He wore the same tan coat, but now it looked out of place among the volunteers in hoodies and old jeans. His hands, used to signing papers and shaking hands at real estate showings, fumbled with cardboard boxes and tape. "Stack those by the door," a woman instructed briskly, not caring about his coat or who he was. Her name tag read Alma Rosado. She hadn't smiled since he arrived. Ryan froze at the name, recognition clawing at his stomach. She was Miguel's wife. He looked for a chance to say something, to explain, but she brushed past him, carrying twice the weight he had managed. Her silence was worse than accusation. Hours passed. He sorted food, bagged groceries, and loaded vans. Sweat slicked his forehead. His back ached in a way he'd never felt before. Every time he glanced up, he caught Alma's eyes on him, sharp, weighing, as though she knew exactly what kind of man he was. At noon, Arthur walked in. He stood quietly at the door, watching his son bend under boxes. He didn't speak, didn't intervene. He only noted that Ryan didn't quit, though his face showed he wanted to. That evening, they went to the hospital. Miguel Rosado lay pale and still beneath tubes and machines, a faint beep marking time. Alma stood at his side, smoothing the blanket. Lucia, their 5-year-old daughter, clutched a crayon and a coloring book, sitting in a plastic chair too big for her. Ryan lingered at the door, unable to step closer. He had faced angry clients before, police once for a bar fight, but never this, never the quiet of someone who had nearly died because of him. Arthur moved forward and set a small bouquet, fresher than the one Ryan had brought the night before, on the table beside the bed. "He kept me alive," Arthur said softly to Alma. "I won't forget that." Alma's eyes glistened. She nodded but said nothing. When Lucia's crayon rolled off the chair, Ryan bent instinctively, picked it up, and placed it gently back in her small hand. She looked up at him with big, uncertain eyes, then turned back to her coloring. No words passed, but something shifted in the silence. The weeks blurred. Ryan returned each morning to the fund. He swept floors, carried boxes, delivered envelopes of aid to families whose lights would have gone out without them. His soft hands blistered, his suits gathered dust in the back of his closet. Every Thursday, Arthur joined him for the hospital visit. Sometimes Miguel stirred faintly, sometimes not at all. Alma rarely spoke to Ryan, but she didn't send him away. That was its own kind of mercy. By the 3rd week, Ryan no longer asked how long this would last. By the 5th, he no longer looked at the safe with hunger but with something closer to fear. By the 7th, he knew Lucia's favorite crayon color, blue, and brought her a small pack each visit. Arthur noticed. He didn't praise him. He didn't forgive him out loud. But he saw. And in his silence, Ryan felt the weight of both judgment and the faintest possibility of redemption. It was not money that the safe had opened that night. It was a debt deeper than numbers, one that Ryan was only beginning to repay, day by day, box by box, visit by visit. And still, Arthur knew, the real reckoning had yet to come. A month later, the air in Arthur's house carried a different stillness, not the suffocating kind of betrayal, but the heavy quiet that comes after a storm has passed, when branches still drip and the ground is soft with mud. The safe in the closet sat closed, its keypad dark, yet its presence filled every corner like an unspeaking witness. Ryan had changed in small, visible ways. His tan coat hung looser on him now, worn from weeks of lifting boxes. His palms, once smooth, bore faint scars where blisters had healed. He no longer arrived at the fund late or left early. He learned to pack rice into family bags without spilling. He learned to listen instead of explain. He learned Lucia Rosado's laugh when she colored outside the lines, and Alma's silence when she stood by Miguel's bedside. On a gray evening, Arthur sat at the kitchen table, the ledger of debts open before him. He had read the numbers countless times, but tonight his eyes lingered not on the total but on the handwriting itself, his own, patient, careful, line after line. It looked less like accounting now, more like a record of years where love had disguised itself as rescue. The front door opened. Ryan stepped in, his hair damp from drizzle, his coat folded over his arm instead of thrown across a chair. He set a grocery bag on the counter, vegetables, bread, soup cans. "I picked up extra," he said quietly. "For the fund. They were short today." Arthur studied him for a moment. Then he stood and motioned toward the hallway. "Come with me." Ryan hesitated, but followed. The closet door opened with its familiar groan. Arthur knelt, entered the code, and the safe side opened one last time. The green glow washed over their faces. Inside, the contents were unchanged: the pearls, the folders, the drives, the thick envelope marked for Detective Ruiz, and the amendment document that had bound Ryan to his restitution. Arthur touched none of it. Instead, he spoke, his voice low, deliberate. "When I opened the safe that night, I wasn't testing whether you would beg. I was testing whether you would ask the right question, about the man, about Miguel. You didn't. You asked for money." Ryan's eyes dropped. Shame flickered across his face. "I know," he whispered. Arthur's hand hovered over the drives but did not lift them. "What you don't know is this: I gave one copy to Nora before dinner. The proof was never only here." Ryan's head snapped up, eyes wide. Then why?" "Because the safe isn't just steel," Arthur said. "It's a mirror. That night, it showed me who you were. These weeks, I've been watching to see if it can show me someone else." Silence filled the closet, broken only by the steady tick of the hall clock. Ryan's throat worked. "And, do you?" Arthur looked at him for a long moment, then closed the safe gently, spinning the dial until the green light died. "I see a man beginning. Not finished. But beginning." For the first time in years, Ryan didn't reach for the safe, didn't even glance at it as though it owed him something. He only nodded, his jaw tight, his eyes wet. Arthur placed a hand on his shoulder, firm, not forgiving, but steady. "The money is gone. The trust for the Rosados is sealed. That won't change. But your name, your conscience, those are still yours to rebuild." Ryan swallowed hard, his voice breaking. "Then I'll keep working. As long as it takes." They walked back to the kitchen. Outside, the drizzle had stopped, leaving the street shining under the lamplight. Across town, in a hospital bed, Miguel Rosado stirred faintly, his hand twitching once beneath Alma's watchful gaze. Arthur sat at the table again, the house quiet except for the tick of the clock. The safe upstairs was locked, but in that silence, he knew something had shifted. The lock had sealed not just the steel door, but the end of the old Ryan. Whether the new one would last, only time would decide. And so the safe stayed closed, its secrets intact, while father and son sat in a house that, for the first time in years, felt less like a battlefield, and more like a beginning.